Yo ho ho! This evening I'll be doing a review on Confessions of an English Opium Eater by Thomas de Quincey. Published in 1821, this is considered to be the first memoir written on drug addiction, in which de Quincey describes his life after he runs away from boarding school and becomes an opium addict while being homeless. So let me give you a brief synopsis of what happens in it. De Quincey is a well-educated man. His main love in life is ancient Greek, and he's fluent in this by the age of 15, which is something he's very proud of. Although he does seem to have a good, privileged life, he does have his troubles. When he was 7 years old, his father passed away, and then throughout his life he suffers from various ailments. His first experience with the drug is when he's in school. Suffering from a toothache, a friend suggests that he tries opium as it's a very strong painkiller, and then later in life he continually takes it to deal with an ongoing stomach issue. So the book is very small and it's split into two sections: the pleasures of opium and the pains of opium. The pleasures really outweigh the pains. At a certain point in the book, he muses on how easy it is to get opium, that you can just walk into a chemist and just get it over the counter. And it's as if in that moment he's admitting to thinking that it shouldn't be as easily attainable as it actually is, and that he realizes what a serious, dangerous drug it is. Then the book ends in a very peculiar sort of way, and this isn't really a spoiler or anything like that. I got the feeling while reading this, and this is only a couple of pages in, that de Quincey was very high on himself and that he held a very high opinion of himself. And I couldn't shake that feeling off for the rest of the book, and it's as if he seems to try to appear more intelligent than he actually is. He uses a lot of flourish with his writing, which sometimes can really work, but other times it can't. And in this, I felt that he was saying a lot more than he needed to say, but I felt it was very damaging to his writing. It made it uneasy to read in the sense of that it weighed down the sentences. There were certain paragraphs that I had to read a few times over just to try to understand what the point he was actually getting at. Like, I've read plenty of text from this time period and I've never had this experience before, but he came across to me as a stereotypical man from that era. A lot of snobbery and prejudice, and you actually see this prejudice at the end of the book. It was very bizarre the way the book ended, because he basically just went into a racist rant. He's talking about like things he hopes never happened to him and basically his worst nightmare, and his worst nightmare is to end up living in Asia, and he just goes on this absolute tear of how much he would hate it. And it's just such an odd note to end the book on, because he could have easily left that bit out and it would have been fine, and it would have ended fine, you know. It would have taken me by surprise if I hadn't made my mind up about him from the get-go, that I kind of saw this coming. I know some people might say to me, oh well, it was a sign of the times, you know, what do you expect of a man in the 1800s to be like? But I kind of reject that idea. I think his attitude is still very relevant to what's happening today in certain parts of the world, but it was just a very peculiar note to end the book on. My favourite section of the book is in the pleasures of opium, and he describes what he likes to do after taking the drug. He likes to walk around town and just watch people and watch the goings on. I think that's what a lot of people generally like to do, depending on your drug of choice. While I was reading it, I didn't really understand why de Quincey chose to quit the drug. Obviously, you know, you shouldn't be taking such serious drugs for such a prolonged amount of time because it does such damage to your body. But it seemed like when he was writing this that he was really into reminiscing on what it was like, and that he missed it, and that if he had it his way he would have never stopped. Overall, I didn't like him as a person. I didn't really feel sorry for him. Another interesting bit about this is that the characters that you see who come into his life, you don't get a sense of anyone else aside from him. This is a very Thomas de Quincey centric novel, and it can be done. Like, I recently read Junkie by William S. Burroughs, and you get a sense of everyone else who comes into his life, and you get to know their characters. But this, he just didn't paint his world very clearly. So the pros of this book is that yes, it's the first memoir ever written on drug addiction. However, I don't feel that it's a must read. I don't feel like you'll be missing out by not reading it. I think it's more so up to your own personal preference if it's a topic that interests you and you don't mind reading literature from the 1800s. But I had a lot of problems with it. I can enjoy certain parts of it, like I said, but that was pretty much the only section that I actually enjoyed. The only section that I thought was interesting. Aside from that, I just felt that it was just, I was reading about a man who was completely and utterly infatuated with himself. And that's kind of upsetting, because that's the first time I've ever had that kind of experience with reading a book. So, Confessions of an English Opium Eater, it is what it is. Let me know if you've read this, if you have any similar thoughts to me, if you disagree. let's get a conversation going, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will talk to you soon. Goodbye.